Hey, what's up, gurus? My name is Craig Finley. I'm back with the next video here in the MSSP series. Today we're going to be talking about configuring the SIEM and SOAR communications for MSSP. So in the first video, we went over the architecture and the layout. We basically discussed what it all looks like when we have this set up. And now we're going to go into more information about configuring the apps that make that happen in the background. Now, before we get started, a few things we want to cover here. We want to talk about some highlights here of SIEM to SOAR. Basically, the SIEM uses this thing called domains to separate data from one client to the other, while on the SOAR side, we're using this construct called an org. So, as we're setting this up, those two ways of separating out the information are going to be really key and crucial to us getting each individual client's data to the right org on the SOAR side. So there are a couple of ways that we could do this. Basically, where the sources are coming from. So with QRadar, you could have log sources or you could have flow sources. So you could have the logs that are coming in, or you could have the network traffic, and those can be organized. You can organize them into groups and then apply the groups to the domain, or you can apply the individual objects to the domains. So we will. We're not going to concentrate on setting up or configuring that part of QRadar. It's more about getting the apps to talk. So some of that will be there for us. We'll just point it out as we go along. And once we have that all set up and working properly, the next thing we'll have here is the domain mapping. So we're going to map the domains to the SOAR orgs. And that means that any event that's triggered based on an event or a flow that triggers an offense in that particular domain will be transmitted over to that org on the SOAR side. And we do this by mapping them together using templates, right? So the templates can be constructed right there in the GUI of the app. You can download it as a file off to the side. But the main thing that I want you to understand there is that the template's job is to map what's in the QRadar SIEM API or whatever SIEM you're using over to the SOAR API. It's a translation layer, if you will, and it's you set it up before you do anything with it to make sure that that translation does occur. And then when that's all finally done, we have everything set up and structured so that the QRadar, in our case here as the SIEM, but it could be any SIEM, we have that set up so that the SIEM will be able to push the offense over to a SOAR case, right? So whatever the nomenclature is for the type of SIEM you're using, feel free to fill it in. Replace my words with it, right? Instead of saying QRadar, maybe you would say, hey, it's a Splunk, and we're sending over a notable event, right? But it would work the same way, and it would be the applications that would be set there for the different layers. We notice here that push is in bold here, right? Because we want to really put an emphasis here in this video that this one is pushing information over to the other side, and then later on we'll see how another application that we have on the SOAR side will actually pull information back to the case. So it's really, really important that we make that distinction now. All right. So on the SOAR to SIEM highlights, as we start to transition and talk about the other side, the SOAR side is going to receive the incident escalation and initiate the case. So there's going to be a unique mapping, right? Each offense is going to have an ID. Now a case has been created. We have a case ID. It is those two things that are unique together. It's almost like a foreign key, if you will. In database terms, you have two different tables have keys, right? Well, we have two different applications here. Offense ID is a unique identifier on the SIEM side, where the case ID is a unique identifier on the SOAR side. So once we get this case over and it's created, now the SOAR can go back and say, hey, we're going to go back and query the API for the offense ID, and we're going to gather additional information here, right? So that is the second application that we're going to talk about today. That is the QRadar Enhanced Data Migration app that is used to pull that information back to the other side. So you have a escalation, as we talked about on the previous slide, and then you have the additional information that is reached back to the SIEM and pulled over, and this presents all of the information that the analyst needs under that one single pane of glass within SOAR. So that's our task for today. That was a quick introduction. We're going to break it down into 5 steps that we're going to go through to accomplish this mission here. The first one we're going to do is take a look at the domains and the log sources from the QRadar side. So let's dive into it. All right, here we are at the QRadar console, so we'll go ahead and get logged in. When we log into QRadar here, we want to go into the admin section. So we're just going to click here, go to admin, and we're just going to look at a couple of pieces of information here just to build our background for what we're doing in our video today. So, we have our data sources that come in, we have events, we have flows, and with the different events there, we have log sources. So I'm going to click here on log sources. It's going to bring up an extra application here, and we'll see that we have a number of different log sources here that are already tied together. All right. So these are all the things that have sent in events to this particular QRadar installation. And as you can see here, for example, this Windows Authentication Server 10.12.10.5 is in Client A log source group. So we've already pre-configured those. We just wanted to kind of like go here to show you that there are a number of log sources that will be in play, and that will be a different log source for each person that is reporting into this SIEM, right? So anything that is for Client B is labeled as such within its log source group, all right? So these log sources could be applied individually to a domain, or the groups could be applied to a domain. So on your side, you will have that portion set up. Now we go back here to the system configuration, and we're now going to look at the domain management. So we're going to create a new domain here. So I'm just going to click on add. All right, we're going to call this Client A. And now we have that set up. So we're going to go for events, and we're going to go for log sources. So we're going to take Client A as the log source and hit add. Well, as I showed you on the previous screen, those are already sorted into this group, so that makes that real easy. We also discussed that you are able to add a individual log source there if you needed to, right? So I could take any of these particular ones and throw that in as well as a log source to that particular client. All right, so we'll go ahead and leave that one there as an example here for the video. We'll go ahead and create, and we now have that log source, or I'm sorry, that domain created for those log source groups. All right, so let's do the other two. Alrighty, so with that step, we have now done those that first portion of the configuration. All right, so let's close this and let's move on. Now, the next thing we have to do is we have to configure the SOAR application. When you install these on the QRadar side, they go in as an extension. So we have the SOAR plugin here that is installed. Really the key part to notice here is this is going to be an escalation point. This is where the push is going to come from. So we have this app installed on the QRadar side. Now for it to run, it runs with a certain set of credentials, right? And so for those credentials, we are going to generate this thing called an authorized service token. So I'm going to create this. I'm going to pause the recording and create this because I have to copy that key over. And okay, so we will look at this up into the point where the key is generated. So this is going to be SIEM to SOAR. authorized token. And for our permissions here, we are going to give it admin. And we are not going to set an expiration date on there. We don't need that for this particular one. And we click save. And now we're able to copy this off to another place. I'm going to copy this off, and then we'll be ready for the next step. So now that that is saved, we are done with this pane. Now we go here to apps on the QRadar side. We have this IBM QRadar SOAR plugin. So we go ahead and open the SOAR configuration app. And from here, we're going to paste in the authorized token. So I guess you'll be able to see it, but you don't have access to the system. And that's just fine with me. Now the next thing we need is the SOAR server URL. That's located at 180. And we have to put in our API key. So this is a spot where we're going to have to generate some stuff on the SOAR side. You see, with this application, we're able to configure things on the SOAR side through this app. So as we set it up to connect and we test it, once we get it really set up there and connected and tested, it will create objects for us on the SOAR side. For us to do that, we need to use an API key to connect. So I'm going to move this window off to the side just a little bit so it's out of the way. That was not what I wanted it to do. And I'm going to go to my SOAR machine and I am going to log in. All right, so here on the SOAR side, I'm going to create an API key. So we'll say SOAR API for SIEM app. Description. This is for Escalation and bidirectional communication. All right, so we see here that that API key is being created here in the MSSP config domain. We're going to go ahead and check it and give it all permissions there. You could limit it however you need it to, but we're going to go ahead and give it all permissions. I'm going to scroll to the bottom and hit create. Okay, so now I need to copy off this key and this secret. And now that I have it copied off, I'm just going to look at it, A196. All right, I think we're good to go here. So I'm going to hit OK. And we are going to navigate back to our configuration screen. All right, so now we're going to place those values in. Just going to get my API key ID and paste it in there. I'm going to grab my API secret. And paste that in as well. Now, because we are doing the MSSP variant, it's very important that we check this checkbox here, multiple organization support. Multiple organization support, right? This is necessary because we have multiple organizations. We've got config, dashboards, we've got child A, child B, and child C. So this is setting up the app to say, hey, we're going to reach over and touch the configuration domain, and then the configuration will be able to push to the others. Also, if you back up in the video, you'll see that we created that key tied to that configuration. So now we need the MSSP config org name. So we need the MSSP config here. We need to make sure it's a complete match. So we're going to go ahead and enter it. And it needs to be an exact match there, right? Case sensitive, so there's upper, lowercase. Just double check that, make sure there's only one underscore there. All right, good deal. We have our timeout, how long SOAR has to respond it. Default set to 30 seconds. We're just going to take it up to 300. It'll be fine for us here. Now, there is an article that will be included in the notes about the trusted certificates and things like that. In a more secure environment, you want to make sure that certificates are verified for these inter-machine communications that are going to occur on top of the API. A little bit out of scope for what we're getting accomplished here today, so I'm going to uncheck this, which means the certificates won't be verified. And we also have the check button we talked about a little earlier, enable configuring SOAR. So I like to first click that button there. And then I like to go and hit save, right? I like to save my settings here as we do so many things in here. All right, so the first message we get, connected successfully, action configuration, check fails, required message destination is missing from SOAR. Some features of this app will not be available. All right, well, that's all the reason that we need to enable the configuration of SOAR. You can check the other videos as it talks about it here, but we actually have this QRadar destination name here at the top. This is the message destination that is being created on the other side for those particular things. So without this button checked, we went over to touch it and to see if the message destination was there. It was not. This time, with the button check, enable configuration of SOAR, we're going to hit verify and configure. Now, the thing is, right away, that configuration is not there. It's not necessarily going to be available. But if we are making some good progress here, we're looking for our message destination here to be created here on the configuration side. As this is going through, that object will actually be created. So right now we're under admin settings. We're going to go and toggle to customization settings and look at destinations. And look here. All right, so we have a little bit of progress. This is actually being created by the API. So we're just going to pause the video here for a little bit and let this thing do some of the things it needs to do in the background as these two APIs talk to one another and create objects. All right, so we have configuration save. So we've got everything properly configured here on this first tab. It's time to move forward. The next tab we have here is the escalation tab. This is where we have the template that is actually mapping from one value from the QRadar API over to the SOAR API as we described. And the easiest way to do it is to hit build new template. Now when you go with the new template, you're going to give it a name. So we'll give it the template client _ and then you see there are certain asterisks there that are required fields. So when you have this set up and you have the bidirectional communication done, and it can talk to the other side, these fields, these drop down here, these right here are SOAR based fields, so they're actually reading from the other side for the construction of the template. So these are any fields that we have that are set up there. And these are the ones with the brackets that you see there are actually the QRadar template fields. So we could actually go through and put in everything that we needed here for this incident. We're going to do malware for our example today. So I'm going to change that from system intrusion to malware. And just make sure I got something in all the required fields here. If I do, as you see here, the drop down, I can read the users. So I'm going to assign this one here. Since this client A is going to go to Alice, that was from our initial setup. And we have resolution summary. Not going to set those just yet. That looks like everything that we need there in that template. So once we have all of this information filled out, and if there's something that is needed and it's not here, it will give us an error message. We'll get some messaging right up here near the top. So I'm going to scroll here to the bottom, and I am going to save this as a template. Right, there we are. Template has errors. So just going to pause the recording, go through and correct whatever we have here, and then we will move forward. Be right back. And we are back. I went ahead and saved some time there and created the other templates there. So moving on with our options here, we have a few artifacts that we can suppress, not have those sent over. So, if we have something like infrastructure addresses like that, and we don't want automatic threat feeds enriching those sources, we could exclude those. But moving a little bit further down here, I think we want to talk more about automatic escalation versus manual escalation. All right. So when you're manual escalating, you will be from the QRadar Offense tab. You have a button available that says Send to SOAR. But for an automatic escalation condition, you could read anything from the QRadar Offense field, have it match on a value or expression, and then you choose a template here. So if I were to put an asterisk there or a star, it would say, hey, I'm going to find everything that there has an offense source, and I'm going to send it to client A for malware. Now, this doesn't necessarily map very well for us in this MSSP configuration because we're going to need to map our domains to orgs. All right, so we're not going to do much here on this tab. We're going to move over and continue and look at some of the other options. The mapping here is going to be the domain to org on the mapping tab, so we'll get there next. All right, this checkbox here enables aerial queries from the SQL back against the database on the QRadar side. So we could actually put in an aerial query here, give it a name, and have that transmitted across. We have the ability to enable adding reference sets information here. So once I save that and enable that, I can bring back any reference sets that are from the QRadar side. So we would give a function on the source side where we could add data to reference sets, right? A little bit outside of the scope of our discussion today, but the ability is there. Now with the bidirectional and the cross-configuring, we have the ability to synchronize notes from QRadar. So if we were posting any notes that are sent back to the incident level on the source side will be written back to the QRadar offense. We have the ability to close the offense when the case is closed. And we also have the ability to close from SOAR or QRadar and have it map back across. So these are offense close reasons, and for the ones that we have there, if something is closed from the source side and sent to QRadar, that would be the resolution summary that would go into the field, and it would be sent back to the other side. So with all of that configured, I'm just going to go ahead and hit save again. And we'll move over to our mappings. Now here on our mappings is where we're going to map the different domains to the orgs. So what we want here is we're going to map client A to child A. We're going to hit the plus button here, and you see that mapping is there now. We're going to select the next one, B to child B, and we're going to map client C to child C. So now that we have all of our orgs set up here, we're actually going to save this, and now we're going to do a configuration push. So this is going to push this over to our config org in our MSSP, which is going to push it down to the child orgs. Now, of course, that configuration push is actually happening on the other side. So it's executed. We're going to give it a little bit of time for it to complete. I'm going to pause the video here and get ready to go ahead and stage some event. So I'll see you momentarily on the log sources screen. All right, so we have our system now going. It is generating a number of events there, and pretty soon we will start to see some of these events being correlated into rules that are firing, and we'll have some offenses. There we go. We have some offenses. So we're going to be ready to move to our next step. All right, let's move on to the next step, step 4, which will be to configure the QRadar Enhanced Data app. So in configuring this, we're going to add the app at the MSSP config domain. So we navigate here to apps, and click install here, select the file, and yay, it's right there. So I selected the QRadar Enhanced Data app. Go ahead and hit upload file and click next, and go ahead and install it. So we're actually installing the app, all of the fields and things that would go with it. They're installed to our system, and the next thing we want to do is a configuration push so that we can push this down and make it available to the other domains there. I'm sorry, the other orgs. So we want to we'll just say push QRadar Enhanced Data app. All right, we'll hit push, and we will give that a couple of seconds to complete. And we are done. So with that push down, we can now go to the child A. And the steps that we're going to take here are actually going to repeat them for each one. So let's just have a quick overview of what our task would be. So we go to child A, we go over to the apps tab, and we see that the status is disabled. So in MSSP, once again, as a reminder, you could push an app. Apps are pushed from configuration. They go to every org, but every customer may not be using the same. All right. So we're going to have to enable this app. So you see here, details is not selectable. I click enable, hit enable, and now details pops up, and it's ready there for us. So before we can, deploy this app to our app host, a few things we have to do there. We have to go to the configuration and see if there are any edits that we have to do to the app config. There's another video that goes into this more in depth. I'm just going to give you a quick highlights here of what I'm going to have changed and test it. I'm going to go over to the host. I'm going to put the host to my QRadar at 186. We have two ways to authenticate: username and password, or the token. So we're going to put the token there. We are not verifying certificates here for this video, so that will be changed to false. We are going to get rid of this one completely. We're not going to a second destination here for this particular child org. Everything is going through one, so we'll remove that section. And for the CA file here, we'll also turn that to false to turn it off, since we're not using this scenario. So I'm going to pause the video, clean up this file, put in the proper information, and then we'll be ready to move forward. All right. So it looks like everything came back successful here on our test. So that means that our app config checks out. With all of that good information there, we are now in a position to save and push changes. So this sets up a configuration save and push. So any new data fields that were exposed as a part of this application are now going to be created in the incident and the incident layout for this particular org. So we're going to go and repeat this process for child B and child C. I'm going to pause the video, and we'll see you after that is completed. So we are now deployed and all set up. So let's go back to our QRadar. Let's get logged back in. And We're going to navigate over to our offense tab. And we'll look at our offenses here. Let's just sort them by ID. And we'll take the first offense here for client A. And we're going to hit the button here, send to SOAR. So we're going to send it over as a manual escalation to client A using the template. And that's going to pop open in a window for us for that case coming across. Oh, there we go. Looks like I need to log back in here. All right. And there it is. Our QRadar offense is coming over. Now, let's just jump to the activity dashboard. We see that the enhanced data migration is actually running and it's bringing information over. So, with this all set up and configured, you have your case details, our ownership is all set up, our tasks are starting to run, we have our playbook running, and we also have the data that's being pulled from that offense on the QRadar offense tab. So all of this information here could be reorganized and placed within a task or anywhere that the analyst could best use it. So from there, you would just be designing the process for your customers. So with that, I know this was a long one, but we have finally wrapped up this video. We look forward to seeing you next time. Please like, subscribe, and continue to follow us. Thanks a lot. You guys have a great day.